can hear me okay at the back? I generally don't need a mic, I have a loud enough voice. Hi, welcome. My name is Anna Berry. As you can see, I'm from a company called Retail 100 Consulting. I spent 33 years at John Lewis, and I bought 22 categories in that time, so I won't go through all of them, but I bought everything from fashion to sports to homewares to beauty to jewellery. I work now with 3 other colleagues from John Lewis. The reason we're called Retail 100 Consulting is between the 4 of us, we have 100 years of retail experience. In fact, over 100 years of retail experience. I know I don't look old enough. So we have lots of scope across all categories of John Lewis. We've covered everything in that whole department store environment. And I will say that since I started in retailing, it continues to evolve faster than ever. It's really tough in retail now, and it's important to have a really clear plan, particularly if you're going to source. So today I'm going to give you a very quick snapshot of how to manage your sourcing strategy. I'm conscious it's going to be short. I'm very happy to take questions afterwards, and also happy to catch up with people further on from this. So, Retail 100, as I say, has got lots of experience. What I would say the most important thing to do is to, when you first start out on your sourcing journey, and I don't know how far you are down your journey, is use the experience of those people around you and find out as much information as you can. In this world of AI, it's actually really, really easy to get information. Double checking that information is correct will be the important thing. But the way that AI is moving, it is actually very, very easy to look on government websites and look at information and just understand where key sourcing opportunities may be provided for you. Source Fashion clearly is a really obvious place to start, and the Hive team are really incredible at providing support. So if you have questions about something in particular, they can put you in connection with someone who may be able to help you. So using the Source Fashion team at Hive is a really, really useful way if you're at the early part of your journey, or just looking to reconfigure in this kind of crazy volatile world that we're in with Trump. I better not get started on Trump because I could do the whole session on him, so I will try and only mention him where appropriate, but it's obviously complicating the whole sourcing journey for many. Look on where big retailers are making their products, and the benefit of the sustainability and visibility and transparency that we see now is that you can look on really great websites, and I spend a lot of time would be looking at Zara or an H&M and fashion, and you can actually see per product where they're sourcing in their factories. It will tell you country of origin, and below that a drop down will tell you their factory. Now, I'm not saying that because of the volumes they buy that they might be the right factory for you, but they will tell you about the areas and the localities of where these companies are sourcing in terms of where they get their kind of products. So what part of the country is great for cotton, and what is good for linen, what's good for bedwear, what's good for kidswear, sportswear. So it's a really good education if you look at the websites of all the big companies. John Lewis do the same, where you can look at their category and the category that you're in and just see where people are sourcing, and also learning what their price point is and where you think you would set your marker for it. So soaking up all the information that is available to you on those websites is a really critical learning part, particularly on the sustainability journey, and H&M would be the beacons that I would hold out in terms of what they do on sustainability. Their CSR report is absolutely worth reading in terms of what they've done, but they've also gone in at the ground floor into countries like Bangladesh, where they built from the bottom up. So there's a really good story there, and it helps you just to navigate maybe those markets and those areas where you're not clear. LinkedIn, really useful. Use LinkedIn a lot. If you know someone who's in your area, just connect with people. I think what you will learn in life is people like telling you stuff they know. We all like when someone asks us a question, so never be afraid to ask. Use your peer networks, use the guys from Source, use people you know, and just openly ask questions for people who can help you, because they're always very happy to offer you advice. And then Instagram, I don't know if you go on Instagram and look at life of a buyer and life of a merchandiser. They're really, really funny, but also really good insights as to what's happening in the world, because they'll be right at the front of things that are impacting their lives. So well worth looking at what's around. Not to scare you, but it's kind of a tough time in sourcing, isn't it? And we talk about this, the volatility in the market at the minute, not helped by the way that tariffs are moving kind of almost on a daily basis. But this kind of volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world, as VUCA, has been with us for some time now. So what you have to do is just trade through that, but just take an extra step in areas of high risk. Before you commit yourself to something, always just think, what does this mean for me? How prepared am I to risk? What's the scope of what I need to do? And make sure that you feel comfortable with the level of risk that you're going to take. I always say to new businesses in particular, because we do quite a lot of consulting for them, this is a marathon, not a sprint. You're going to have to learn to build your business slowly so you avoid massive risk, because the critical thing in businesses when they struggle is generally not to do with the great idea, the great product, is the fact that they run out of cash or they go too quickly. So managing the growth of your business, don't try and get there too quickly, but grow in a kind of organic way. Have clarity of what you want to do. I mean, that sounds really obvious, but I spend a lot of time with the Association of British Mentors talking to people is, what is your purpose? What do you want to do? What is the product range that you are going for? And generally stick with something you know, particularly in the early days. Stick with a tight range that you're very clear that you are can be an expert in. Look at the quality standards you want, and by that I mean, where are you going to pitch this range? Is this going to be a range that's about volume and low, or is it going to be mid or premium? So thinking about your customer. And the one thing that 33 years of John Lewis taught me, that you cannot be all things to all men. You have to set out your stall and say, what's my purpose? Who's my customer? Who am I trying to attract? And also, what does the rest of that market look like? Where do I see an opportunity or a gap? What do I have that is different? Whether it's where it's made, how it's made, the design level, the quality of it. So thinking really carefully at the start of your journey is, if I had to define what my brand and my supply is, this is what it is, and this is the market that it's going for, So don't try to be all things to all men. You need that absolute clarity and focus at the start of your business. Think about the cost targets and thinking about what you want to sell it for, and what does that mean you have to do in terms of cost targets. I mean, it all sounds very obvious, but it's just helpful to hide it. And think about the lead times, and that's where we'll come to the sourcing journey, because how quickly you can get to your stock, particularly in the fashion world where things move much more quickly. I was in homewares at the end of my life, and it would take us 18 months to build a new range of china, because that was the investment that you have, and these were big for core programs. But if you're talking about fashion items that are going to turn quickly, you've got to be much, much faster than that. So thinking about how long is the life cycle of this? Is this a core program that I see I'm not going to change the options that frequently? Then I need to look at what the core strategy is. How many new options am I going to layer on? So all of that needs to be in a very controlled plan before you even think about going to a factory and sourcing. So there's a number of ways of sourcing. We talk about near sourcing and far sourcing. I mean, it is what it says on the tin. So near sourcing is growing, and I think given the slight nervousness about China and certainly about America and about tariffs, there is an opportunity for more near sourcing. And for those suppliers where you're not looking to buy big MOQs, minimum order quantities, thinking about near sourcing is a really important part of your strategy. And what near sourcing can provide for you is they will take smaller minimum order quantities. And we were chatting this morning with one of our colleagues that it's very exciting and very enticing to think about going to China. And I've been with a retailer who gladly told me, Anna, our in-make margin was 82%. And I said, yes, but what was your exit margin? They were like, oh, what do you mean? And I said, well, actually, you sold less than 40% of that product at full price. Your out margin was about 12%. So there is no point in going and buying 4,500 SKUs in China to get a fabulous in-margin when you don't have an exit strategy. So you need to think about your worst case scenario exit strategy. How much do I think am I going to sell at full price? And you want to be selling close to 70% at full price. And then what does my exit strategy look like in how I take it? How much margin can I play with? Because the important thing about clearing stock is that if it's not a good 30, 40% off, no one's going to buy it. So tinkering with it at 10 and 12% is never going to clear it, particularly in fashion. So that's where near sourcing can provide you with something where you can go to a country that provides you a better quality, so your in margin might be lower. I mean, it'll still be high, but if you go to somewhere like Portugal and you're looking for quality in cotton, you accept a lower in margin, but you're not shipping it halfway across the world. You have the benefit that you can probably get it in maybe 4 to 6 weeks as opposed to 12 or 14 weeks. You can buy less, and in a fashion environment, it's obviously very enticing because you can buy lower drops. And then if something is moving faster, what you want to be able to do is repeat it. So repeating your best sellers at the right time is a much easier process to do, obviously, if you have near-shored. And certain things come from certain countries. Morocco is a country that's really growing. It's sort of nearer shore. Egypt is really growing. And all this information you can see on the company websites. Look at the Department of Trade and Industry. Look where your product is, because there is an opportunity to find what's right for your product. If, however, you're at the stage where you're looking for more volume or you're looking in categories, so denim is a perfect example where quite a lot of denim will come far short. It'll come out of Bangladesh. Yes, it will come out of China. And if you ever go into Zara or H&M, I'm always looking at labels on products and seeing where they come from. And you'll tend to find that the core volume denim that's repeated again and again will possibly come from China, but the stuff that has embellishments or is fashion or is about a jacket or a waistcoat will tend to come from a nearer shore. Might come from Bangladesh because they have such buying power, but also you'll see quite a lot of what is in Zara and H&M is coming out of Morocco or Egypt or those kind of countries. So they will do what we call blend their sourcing strategy, and that will give you what we call a blended margin. So for example, if you know you need to get to a target profit margin, you can source some of your product from China where you're prepared on your core lines to take a risk, which is what we do in John Lewis. So big towel programs or big furniture programs would come there. And then on other categories, we would then buy some in Europe where it felt more appropriate, where we could respond to trends. So having a sourcing strategy that is flexible is more important than ever. The other thing to say is there is no such thing as China bad, UK good, and I have that conversation with a number of people. When I'm mentoring people, they always go, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm actually sourcing in China. That's not a bad thing, as long as you're really clear why you're sourcing there, what does that company provide for you, has it got credentials that you're really happy, have you got SEDEX and all the approvals that you need, that you're very confident that it's coming out of China, but that factory is brilliant. And lots of factories in China are now recirculating waste, and India is very good at this as well. So as long as you understand why you're sourcing there is no problem with saying I need a strategy where some of it will come from China, some of it will come from near sourcing. We work with a very useful company called Kalara. And if anybody wants the address, I'll give it to you. So for those of you who are earlier in your journey, it's like a sourcing company. And they're in India. They're backed by the biggest company in India, by a company called Reliance. But what Kalara are is like a sourcing office for small suppliers. They will work with small MOQs. They're incredibly ethical. They're about sustainability. They work with over 3,000 factories in India and Bangladesh, and they also work in Vietnam and Thailand, and they can help you on your sourcing journey. They can also, if you're unsure in the first journey, help you with landed costs. So all the complexities of how much is shipping, how much is freight, what's the duty of that, how do I work if I can't fill a container, because if I can't fill a container it's going to cost me money. Kalara will do all of that, and they will say, okay, we will manage that for you, and they will amortize it between all of their factories, and they can pull all your orders together into a container that's already being full. So there's different ways of looking at it. And even if you don't go with a company like that, look at their websites, because they will take you through the steps that you need to understand how your sourcing could work for you. And in terms of choosing between, sea and air or land, you generally are going to choose sea because it's cheaper. It's also better for the environment. But if you don't have 14 weeks to wait and you get caught out, you're going to end up air freighting. And we did have situations where we had to do that because we had a Christmas ad where we had run out of the sales of the furry animal by week 3, and we were air freighting stock in, which never felt very comfortably for me as head of Christmas, but we couldn't sell out of Monty the Penguin before the ad had even launched. So sometimes you have to air freight, but you can offset that air freight if you want, but it will cost you more. If you're shipping very heavy product, you're not going to be air freighting. You're going to want to go by sea. But having all of those decisions in your strategy and your plan so you can de-risk where you're going to have to spend more money is very, very helpful. Customs and duties. So yeah, who knows what they're going to be in the next time. So this is really important. I was mentoring quite a big supplier who said we'd completely underestimated what the duties and costs and customs were going to be. We hadn't even built it into our end margin, and suddenly what we thought was a really profitable line wasn't. And what they then had to do, and didn't have time because it was a Christmas fashion product, they needed to get it in and take the hit. So what you need to do is manage that you've got the whole margin from start to finish, and making sure you've got all of that in your plan so you can, through your spreadsheet, look at where your actual margin is going to land, because there are costs along the way. And that's where the benefit of looking at somewhere like a near sourcing country, where there is Turkey, for example, where there's no tariffs, or India is trying to do a negotiation with the UK, and it's been happening for some time, and India is trying to get less tariffs, and there are less tariffs in India at the minute versus China. And the way that this kind of trade war is bubbling at the minute, you're just going to see tariffs moving a lot. So being up to speed on that and agreeing what you're paying and understanding what you're paying will be really, really important in this environment. Same with currency and hedging. We always say buy in the currency of the country you're in, so buy in local currency. Don't get tempted to use sterling because it'll cost you dearly. So buy in the local currency, but also get some advice. And there are lots of websites that can advise you on this as well, who advise on currency. And Hive have some really great contacts as well. And they'll do a no-fee early chat with you if you want to do it, if you're unsure how to do it. What you don't want to do when you're building your business is be a banker. And we had this in John. I mean, we were buying tens of thousands of product, and it's hard enough to manage your margin when you've got rates fluctuating all over the place. But what you want to do is hedge. So at least if you take a point and you say, I know what my currency is worth, at least you know what your margin is. If you risk it and the currency goes the wrong way, then you've lost all your profit. So really important to think about what the impact of currency is going to be on your ranges as well. But get advice. It's not easy, and you don't want to be a banker at the same time as a buyer. So costing and margin. So we talked about it a bit about, you've got to make some profit on this. You know, sales are for vanity, profits from sanity. I'm sure you've probably heard that quote before. So in terms of how you make money, there are different routes to do it. So the blended margin that I was talking about, you can't understand that you're going to make same margin on every product. You will make some more on others than depending on where you source it, on the volumes you buy. The trick clearly is to try and make high margin on your core, because that's where you're going to drive your volume. And the layer on top of what you do, be less concerned if it's going to, if you're only buying less quantity, it's not going to drive your overall margin down. And it might be that it's a seasonal top up or whatever that you just want to get into. And you actually, if it's a seasonal top out, will be quite happy to sell out. So sell out is not a bad thing, particularly in fashion. If you sell out, move on and go on to the next thing, particularly if it's a product that's highly, highly seasonal. Buy to sell out, particularly in the early days when you're sourcing. That's a really great thing, and you should absolutely enjoy the success of selling out. Think about cross-costing between factories, so don't always take the first price you're given. It can take a long time, and I understand we would do very, very intensive long-term negotiations, but making sure you get a number of costs across factories, and you can get lots of support from people to help you to understand that as well. And also thinking about what you want from that factory. So take the whole cost from start to finish and understand what's important to you, because there may be different levers that are important to you. But understanding and having a plan will help you understand where I'm prepared to move and where I'm not, and what's important to me. Container fills, we've talked a little about it. You're not possibly going to be at a stage where you can container fill. Think about different ways of doing that. Think about factories who may help you and say, look, we'll amortize and we'll do it. We know you're very small and we want to grow with you. And that's where building relationships with factories is incredibly important. Business is about people. You know, it's about building relationships, and if you have strong relationships with people, they want to help you. If you're new on your journey, if they can see there's an opportunity with your brand, they will want to build with your brand with you. So building a strong relationship at acting and asking open questions and asking where people can help you to see if they can help you deal with the volumes. Exchange rates we've talked about, and quality. I mean, quality control, really critical. So it's all very well designing an item. You really need to understand the QC of the products you've got. And the clarity of the way that you brief to suppliers Absolutely critical. And this again in John Lewis, we had to spend a lot of time on this when we opened a new sourcing up, is understand what we meant. If you are not clear in your brief, you will not get the quality of product that you want, and you will waste a lot of time going back and forward. And we would do things called gold seals and red seals. So the red seal was the first sample, the gold seal was the final sample, and always holding a final sample and ensuring that what you get is what you asked for. Because if it's wrong, you need to go back to that supplier and say this. And if you're a new brand, quality is everything. Well, it is for every brand, but you don't want to be struggling with your quality early on. So making sure that you've had real clarity of what you want from that supplier, and that you've all along the line checked that you are getting what you're asking for. And then effective communication goes along the line, as I say, with all of it. So I'm not trying to frighten you, but there are lots of things to consider. Regional nuances, again, you can learn that by talking to people, talking to Hive, talking to your colleagues and peers, and you'll understand that, talking to people here. Thinking about holidays, so we work with India quite a lot, and there's a lot of holidays there, so making sure that you know. On the other hand, Portugal shuts down for the whole of the summer, as does Italy. And I used to buy lots of product in Italy, and literally in August, Italy shuts. So if you haven't managed your critical path with an awareness of the fact that Italy shuts down, or China has Chinese New Year, you will then have really late deliveries. So again, it's all about the planning and understanding where you're sourcing and where those nuances are. Cultural variations as well, how you deal in certain businesses. Some countries can be quite hierarchical, and that might be where you want an agent to help you to navigate that as well, and understanding how that works. But just being aware and being sensitive to the cultural differences. Language barriers, again, that might be where you need some support, where you need an agent to help you with that. And that's why sort of countries like Sri Lanka are growing in popularity, because they all speak English, they're like a British country, and they're very efficient in how they deal. So when you're looking at where you're sourcing, just think of all the barriers that may be there that you haven't thought of that might make things difficult, particularly when I come to clarity of briefing. If there's a cultural and a language barrier, that may be difficult for you. So making sure you've covered that as well. Thinking about freight forwarders who can help you. Again, Clara are really great at that. And we've talked about free trade. Thinking about legal and regulatory requirements, and this is really, really critical, making sure that you are covered. So if you are going to be sourcing, make sure that they have SEDEX approval, or they have all the right things, and make sure that you know what is required and that you get evidence of it. And if a company is not on the path, asking what they are doing to get on that path, because quite often you can go to a factory in India and you complain about the fact that they're wearing flip-flops, but in fact it's so hot they're not going to wear boots. So you have to understand that you're in that country, as long as everything is safe within that environment, just understanding how that works, but covering and making sure that it is safe as possible. Travel visas, do it early. They take way longer than you imagine, so make sure you book those weeks and weeks and weeks in advance. And sustainability, we're going to be talking about sustainability later. Sustainability has got to run through everything that you do with your brand. We'll talk about the fact that in really tough times, it's tough, sustainability, because it costs you money and it costs you time and resources, and you have to invest in it. But you need to really think about the purpose of your brand. How ethical and sustainable do you want your brand to be? And if it is coming from China, do I want to offset the cost of that coming from China? As long as I'm really comfortable in the factories that I'm with, and they are ethical and sustainable factories, and I'm happy about that, but how other ways can I offset the impact on the world and the environment of that? So sustainability is a really important thing, and lots of legislation is coming in on fashion and sustainability, because up to 45% of fashion that is produced in factories in the Far East doesn't hit the shop floor. And the reason for that is that buyers have gone in and they're buying massive MOQs, massive minimum orders, to run these factories and get a great price. And they're overproducing. And a huge percentage of that never actually hits the shop floor before it gets marked down. So we're ending up with lots of low-value product which actually can't go into landfill. So there are lots of regulations coming in that long-term, the company, the supplier that overbuys that will be charged with getting rid of that overproduction. So that will be a cost to businesses. It happened in the tech world and it's coming in the fashion world. And I think it's really important because, thinking about what you produce in an ethical and sustainable way is really important. It's also really good for your business, because if you buy too much, you're going to end up, it's going to cost you money. But it's a really important factor, and the visibility and transparency of what you do is going to become increasingly important, and fashion are leading the way on that because of the change in the volume that goes through it. So think about your audits and think about where you need help, where you need agents. It's all about relationship management. And I mean, I have learned this in my 33 years. It's all about working with people, understanding what you can do with them. You know, building a strong relationship with the factory, wherever it is critical. Being open and honest with the factory. And what used to kind of drive me crackers is when we'd have a factory who wouldn't tell us what was happening. So they were going to be late with delivery. We knew because the silence had got, the silence was very loud. And we kept emailing and saying, where is our stock, particularly when it's seasonal. But when you have a strong relationship with the supplier, we would always say to them, tell us even if it's bad news and then we can deal with it. If we know it's going to be 3 weeks late, we can pull something else or we can pull another lever. Or we can say we don't need everything and we'll hold that to the next season if it's a core product. But don't hide it from us. So I say that works both ways. If you have issues and you have issues with funding or you have issues with your product, always be open and honest. Building a relationship where it comes from a position of trust and authenticity will always help your business. And in sourcing in this really volatile climate, building those relationships will be very important for your business. Do performance reviews when you get to the point where you've worked with supplier. And this we did a lot of this, and it actually works both ways. So when I was head of buying at John Lewis, I asked a number of suppliers, what do we do that drives you nuts? And they were like, Anna, nobody ever asks us that. And I said, yes, but I'm new to this category and what I want to do is learn from you. What could we do better? And they'll say, well, you're not very clear on this, you don't do this. It's never one way, but being really open with the supplier. Because you may say to one of your suppliers, I was unhappy about how late your delivery was. And they might feel that they don't want to say to you, well, the reason it was late is you weren't clear on your brief or you took too long to check the samples. So I always encourage that really strong two-way dialogue, and then you build a really powerful relationship of trust. And we did it at the highest level at John Lewis, and I've done it very recently with some very, very small retailers who've said, I didn't really understand that. I didn't really understand how important it was to build those relationships. And long-term partnership. If you can have a mix of long-term partnerships, that's where you kind of build the trust. What you have to be aware of that, and again, we were guilty of this, and I certainly was guilty of it. It's quite easy to sit with the supply base, you think I'm really comfortable with it, I know how it works, and I know what they're going to do for me. But you need to, if you're going to stretch your brand and stretch your business, always be on the lookout for something new. And it might be that you get to a factory that is quite new in a country that's near to you who are very keen to do some trial stuff with you, and you might just hit on this amazing opportunity that you've missed before. So while it's good to have a blend of very good, strong, long-term suppliers, it's always very well worth looking and seeing what's different and keeping your eyes open, coming to these shows and thinking, I keep hearing about Morocco, I keep hearing about Egypt, what's there that I need? Is there something that I should do? And that's where we really, really challenged our buying teams to say, okay, yes, we know your supply base is good, but actually I'm challenging you to find somewhere different. And when you walk into a factory, quite often you've come in to buy one thing and you see a whole load of other stuff like, ooh, I like that. I mean, that's the kiss of death when the head of buying does it and comes in and says, oh, look at all this lovely, shiny new stuff I've seen, and the buyer's like, oh, this isn't what we're here for. But inevitably you will find something you weren't planning. I'm getting the nod that I need to move quickly. So literally, quick summary. Understand your market demand. Supplier selection is absolutely key, and your partners are absolutely key. Think about compliance, ethical and sustainable, all the logistics and the stuff that's not very fun but is really critical and will have an impact on your business, and the customer feedback and growth. So listening to your customer very early on the days, they're the people who'll tell you the truth. So getting feedback, from your branded suppliers and your customers will help you on your business. Right, I am conscious we have a couple of minutes. Do we have any questions? Or we have any time for questions? If anybody wants to ask me some questions, have we got a catwalk coming, Amina? Okay, so there's going to be a catwalk, so there is no time. If anybody has any questions, I'm very happy you can link in with me, or you can come and catch me now before my next meeting. But thank you so much. I really appreciate your attendance. Thank you.